So far in the UK in 2025, border force authorities say they have seized 250,000 fake toys worth £3.5 million. Sven, guess what the number one category of toy that they seized was? And I hope I say this only because I want to hear you say the name.
Well, since you're asking me, my guess would be it would be Labubu dolls.
The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabir and Bersaftar of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers.
All right, welcome Sven. Welcome everybody to Imitation Nation number 21. We are now legal adults. I think we're past the age of being drafted and we can drink in California and maybe most states.
That is very exciting. I think most states. Yeah, I think that's true. How are you, my friend? Good?
I'm good. I actually am going to be addressing some senior political leaders elsewhere in the country around the 17th of this month. And I'm actually making all sorts of plans to make sure that I get there.
Yeah, I have 2 trips coming up and I'm starting to get a bit worried about that as well. And I hope that this shutdown ends soon, but we'll see. On to our news.
Well, senior trade and policy analyst Piotr Strzałowski at the OECD published a piece this week that I caught called "The Real Cost of Counterfeits is Higher Than You Think." And he said the real cost should include not just the poor quality, but toxic materials and health consequences. And the OECD report said that counterfeit trade has hit nearly 470 billion, which makes it about 2.3% of global trade. And it's no longer just fake handbags. It's auto parts, medicines, of course, toys, even alcohol, products that can literally kill. And the OECD says that 65% of the seizures continue to come from small parcels and mail. Now, this is data working from 2022, so the end of de minimis will affect this greatly.
It's one of the reasons why also our show exists, is the illicit trade continues to grow. This number keeps growing every year. And as you point out, and as we know, it continues to include more and more dangerous counterfeits, including ones that people inject themselves with and all of that. So it continues. Their greed for money is just unmatched. So more work to come. So sobering report. So what I saw, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration said it's looking into 7 incidents, including 5 fatalities, involving the aftermarket airbag parts that failed and ruptured during collisions. Federal regulators say they think the airbags in the incidents contain parts from a China-based company called Jilin Province Ditiano Safety Technologies, also known as DTN airbags. And last year, NHTSA said it was aware of 5 incidents, including 3 fatalities, that included these substandard parts. And now the agency is connecting DTN to those incidents as well. And it also includes a crash in July. So airbag replacements have been in the focus since the 2014 recall of the Takata airbags, which we discussed, which overall now have been linked to over 28 deaths in the United States and tens of millions of vehicles recalled over the past decade. So, yeah, this continues to be an issue.
There is no serialization that I know of mandated on airbags. So I'm just going to say this as a public service announcement. If you've had an airbag replaced in a car, and it wasn't at the dealer, please take it to the dealer to be checked, because you will find out it fails in the worst possible moment. So I actually really liked this just because I occasionally love high-end women's shoes, but France's highest court reaffirmed Christian Louboutin's trademark for their red sole on their shoes and upheld a previous court decision of nearly €250,000 against a defendant who was found to have sold 12 pairs of shoes and 68 handbags, both counterfeit.
Wow.
It actually interestingly reaffirmed the enforceability of the signature red sole trademark under French law. And this is actually something I'm really interested in as we start to watch this massive pipeline. I call it the the trademark enforcement to criminal prosecution pipeline that we're
Yeah.
seeing in medicine right now in the U.S., I'm starting to look around for sources about how well that would work in other countries.
I would certainly love to see something similar like that in the US. France is an outlier. Like we've always looked at it in working with various clients where because France has such a strong luxury good industry, it has been criminal for years to sell, buy, possess counterfeits of luxury goods. And, getting a $250,000 judgment for 12 pairs of shoes, like, yeah, they're not messing around. So I would like those kind of laws for, to your point, pharmaceuticals or anything counterfeit in the United States. That'd be fabulous.
Yeah, it's like getting tried for movie piracy in Los Angeles. It's like, oh yeah, you're not going to get a fair jury there.
Mm-hmm. The European Union, the European Union's Intellectual Property Office announced that in 2024, they have intercepted 112 million counterfeit goods valued at 3.8 billion euros. The second highest seizure year on record. The report has a breakdown of categories of contraband goods, which is topped by fake CDs and DVDs. Italy, Spain, France, the Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, and Poland accounted for 90% of the volumes of the items detained. The top 3 countries of origin, not surprising, and in the order are United Arab Emirates, China, and Turkey. And sea cargo remains the primary mode of transportation for the European Union, which that's actually quite interesting that it's sea cargo.
So I got to ask, why is the UAE higher than China as the country of origin? Is that just a staging area? What has been your experience for where counterfeits come from?
Yeah, so the UAE has massively large free trade zones. And so it gets transshipped through there. So they most likely didn't originate in the UAE. They most likely originated in China or the usual production places. And then they get put into a free trade zone in the UAE. They get refurbished. The paperwork gets slightly modified, to say it kindly, or forged, and then shipped out and declared as UAE product. Probably also to avoid tariffs or further scrutiny. But yeah, the UAE doesn't have a large production facility, but they have massive free trade zones.
They're good at smuggling, not cost efficient manufacturing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're good at smuggling. They're good at making money and looking the other way and kind of saying, as long as you're in the free trade zone, That's really up to you. It's not my business what goes in and what goes out. I know nothing that happens in FTZ. Same in the US. FTZs have always been a pain point for brand protection officials. Panama is notorious as well. They're incredibly hard to enforce. They don't really have a governing body. The paperwork can very, very easily be forged. And, certain things come in and pop out on the other side, declared as something completely different. They have a very good legitimate reason, but they're a big pain in the butt for all of us in the brand protection trade.
And I bet enforcement in any country with a royal family with many sprawling royal relatives is also quite challenging.
Yes, that is true. Trust me, but also dealing with an FTC in the United States, although we don't have a royal family, is still complicated because you're dealing with the bureaucracy of customs. So it's never easy, but yes, I'm pretty sure that the royal decrees don't make it easier.
All right, well, we'll put all these links to the stories in the show notes so you can read more if you're interested. This is my favorite story this week, Sven. The UK's MHRA, which stands for the Medicine and Health Products Regulatory Agency, which I think of as the FDA, made a huge bust in Northampton, England, which is just outside of London. The Criminal Enforcement Unit raided a facility that was, hold on to your hats, manufacturing retatrutide, tirzepatide, and other drugs, and this is the best part, putting the retatrutide, which is not an approved drug anywhere in the world by any FDA, into injector pens for shipment to customers. They basically made an unapproved drug, which couldn't have been legal at any place in the world. There is so much product in this massive, I'll call it a GLP-1 fake super lab, that it took them 2 days to log all the seized materials into inventory. And at the time of the raid, they found inventory in the place of about 2,000 illegally manufactured pens waiting to be shipped out. That alone was worth £250,000. But the authorities say it had been used for large-scale illegal manufacturing for a long time.
What really stands out here for me is the industrialization of these illicit weight loss drugs, right? It isn't a kitchen sink operation, right? It isn't a small mom and pop shop that has a couple of syringes that they're filling up. Like, we're talking about scaled, automated supply chain, industrial level production of a actual pharmaceutical that's not approved by any authority in the world. And the bust really shows how fast these black market criminals are professionalizing, how they're mirroring legitimate manufacturing. And, you know, it's a warning sign that there's something really brewing there that enforcement alone can't do. And we got to find additional ways to make these terrific medicines even more accessible, more affordable, make them more available to patients so they don't seek out illicit options. And
I just want to push back on
that.
that for a second, though,
Please.
because retatrutide, the problem with retatrutide is not that people need affordable options. It's not yet been approved by any health and safety agency in the world. It's not yet been declared safe and effective.
That's a fair point.
I think what really gets me here is the fact that they're putting it in injector pens, which at this point seems almost unnecessary. If you follow the what's happened to Americans in the last 5 years, is we have somehow magically crossed the Rubicon where we will order what are basically research chemicals from people who have never seen an FDA inspector in their facility and inject them into our bodies. And they'll be labeled research chemicals, not for human use, and we'll do it anyway. So the fact that they're now putting it in an injector pen kind of belies the argument that they're research chemicals. Because, you know, if you're running an actual investigational study of some sort, you have a different permit. But they're putting it in pens to make it even more palatable. And I bet there's a lot of Americans who just don't get it. Like, they have no idea that this is not a safe medicine. We seem to have lost the common sense caution that people used to have of putting needles into their arms.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I will fault myself here as well. You know, while I work in a business, I might not readily know if retatrutide is approved, right? I don't know that is necessarily common knowledge. So if you think about it, the criminals are being very smart here. They're taking something that is not approved and illicit, and they put it in a device that makes it look legit. And by putting it into something that looks legit, right, again, commercializing it on a more industrial level, consumers look at it and say, oh, this should be fine. It's actually very akin, if you think about when we had, and yes, I know that's kind of comparing apples and oranges, but when we started to have in the opioid crisis, the fentanyl pills show up, right? People were used to taking M30 pills. And so they made, the cartels made them look like M30 pills. Nobody thought anything of it, or Xanax and all of that, and started to take it, but it had fentanyl in it. So this is the same thing. I take a form that consumers trust, and I put a counterfeit in it, or in this case, not even a counterfeit, a non-approved drug. So it's very smart of them to be unfortunately said. It's shocking, but kind of expected.
You know, one of the legal defenses to the argument that you're shipping a research chemical is that, you know, you don't indicate in any way that it has a health benefit, which keeps you away from the violation of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or that it's for human use, which would obviously suddenly become the purview of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So putting it in a human-compatible injector pen definitely crosses that line. But I guess they just didn't think they were going to get caught. And what criminal does?
No criminal does. And, quite honestly, they just got to get away long enough with it to make a lot of money and then shut down the operation. What's interesting here, what you just said to me, and that's a policy question in the US. I don't have the answer for that, but what are the regulations to order research grade chemicals? Like, shouldn't there just be a regulation that only a hospital, a university, a pharmaceutical company, like somebody that, like, I shouldn't be ordered to order research chemicals. I'm just saying, right? But is that just possible?
I actually
Can
think that
anybody
as
order
long
it?
as you don't cross the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act or the Controlled Substances Act, you're okay. So as long as it's not a controlled substance or a precursor to a controlled substance, which is also controlled, and as long as it's not, I suppose, also a nuclear product, and it's not a weapon of mass destruction, and it's not an illegal medicine. Like if you just wanted to order, I don't know, Kool-Aid
Right.
marked research chemical from China, you can do that.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's really the gray line, like between when is it an ingredient and just a molecule versus when can it be put together into something larger. Yeah, it's an interesting loophole they're exploiting there.
Well, I
And
can tell you for sure, if you promise that it has weight loss or you give human dosing injections, it's a medicine, even if it's water. The minute that you actually make a health claim,
right.
It becomes the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act scope of prosecution.
The Mexican pharmaceutical firm IFA Celtics, which makes a variety of pharmaceuticals for women's health, mental health, and metabolic health, has deployed Forge Stops NFC labels in their production line of medicines. And that's really the first time, or probably the largest investment in anti-counterfeiting technology that a Mexican pharmaceutical firm has ever made with that kind of technology. If you've ever tapped your phone or your watch to pay, you used NFC technology, right? It's basically the tap to pay technology. It is a near RF frequency, and you don't need to download a new app. Anyone from patients to pharmacists to the entire distribution chain can use these to verify the authenticity of medicines. Additionally, these verifications get reported to ForgeStop, who then runs a global sophisticated dashboard that brands can monitor to kind of let them know where these all are. And so if you ship a pallet of medicines to Mexico City and the verifications start popping up in the US, you get a good heads up on a diversion scheme. And since those companies probably know where they sold the pallets to, they can also know the suspects who diverted it. So it's a very cool technology. It takes track and trace to a very new level and makes it very consumer, user, pharmacist friendly. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I heard about this and I was actually kind of excited. As professionals, you and I have fantasies about staring at a giant 72-inch screen showing verifications popping up around the world of a product and being able to spot the ones that look wrong and then scramble people. I think that that's really cool. Obviously, this is one part of a complete brand protection strategy, right? You can't put NFC sensitive checkable labels on a product and assume that your counterfeiting problem goes away. But having it, as you've known, because you've worked in this even longer, much longer than I have, it's part of a whole strategy, and it's a good tool. It's one of these things where if money was no object, you do all the things, and this would be one of the things you would certainly do. But you probably got to get there in steps, and you've probably seen a product do that.
Yeah. And as you say, it's really part of a larger system, and I write about that in publications regularly. For example, a technology like this, and that's why it works for them, because they're in the pharmaceutical world, which is more heavily regulated, which is a more closed supply chain. That works. But like for something like this, you need to have licensing, you need to have reporting, you need to have reporting requirements, you need to have penalties for if people don't report and don't comply with it. And you need to have certain rules where only licensed entities are allowed to buy from licensed entities. That then enables this technology to go through. So to your point, nothing is ever a silver bullet. No technology ever is something where it's just that alone will fix it. It has to be a comprehensive system. And what this technology does, which is really cool, and that's what I'm kind of excited about how they're rolling it out. It's the intelligence loop it creates, right? It's the system where every authentication creates a live data point. And your vision of the NCIS kind of big dashboard with the globe of knowing where all the illicit trade is starts to become more of a reality if you move all that through. For a large client years ago, we looked at near frequency RFID readings for large shipments of goods. As they come in from a truck, they go through a gate, everything gets read, you know what it is. It can be done. It's very expensive, and it's very complicated to do when you don't have a close supply chain, because the moment you go out of the last supply point that was regulated, you lose visibility. So I love that they're doing this. I'm excited to see what the results are when it comes in, and what it really does. But it kind of puts the manufacturer back in control of its own supply chain. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I actually I have some experience. One of my board members was part of the creation of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. He worked in the wholesale level. And so he actually, at one point during the sort of how do we figure out what the right technology is, did a pilot where they put not NFC, but RFID long range chips on every unit of medicine in a warehouse. And he said, I pushed a button and I had a complete inventory of the entire warehouse in like a few seconds, and how amazing that was. So I think that I think that you're right, though. Like if you were to put these tags on bottles of Coca-Cola, which has no supply chain security and no licensing, and diversion probably happens as a matter of course, right? People go to Costco and buy a lot of it, or they go to the store and buy a lot of it, and then they take it to their own 7-Eleven. They're not going to do you a lot of good.
Nope.
Right? Because there's nothing you can do to follow up with it. But I think that these are really cool. And even though there's probably ways to think about trying to defeat it, it wouldn't be fair to pick only one feature of a full brand protection strategy and say that alone is supposed to hold the whole thing up.
Yeah. No, and I think that's exactly it. I actually had a client in the apparel industry who had exactly the problem you described, right? Produced it somewhere, disappeared, showed up in the market where it shouldn't have been showing up. And we looked at various technologies, including this one, and it would have been very expensive. Like, it's not a cheap technology to put in. And then to your point, because I can't read it, it doesn't do it. So for that client, what we ended up doing was actually some very simple print on QR codes that allowed us to understand where it was manufactured and where it flew through, but we used a way cheaper solution that didn't allow our real-time tracking, because that's not how their supply chain worked. So again, there's never a silver bullet, but if the supply chain and your business model and the illicit trade threat fits that mold, then yes, this can be a part of the toolkit that they can deploy. And again, I applaud them for the broad scale rollout of this, which I think is the first large scale industrial rollout of this technology that I'm aware of, especially in the pharmaceutical space. And so I'm excited to see what results they will be able to produce.
Yeah, and they're going to have a challenge in Mexico. We actually do quite a bit of work to track counterfeit medicines in Mexico because they affect Americans so regularly.
Yeah.
Both in the fact that Mexican pharmacy is advertised to American tourists.
Yeah.
But also that just leaks over the border because those border communities are often really merged, right? The border and the wall doesn't matter.
I've been.
Much.
Yeah. I've been.
So we had to draw it back to like only once a quarter, once every 6 months, that we actually sort of summarize the Mexican fake medicines alerts. And there's a big problem down there, and there is a lot of issues there in governance. And so I'm curious to see what kind of, well, yes, I'm being kind. I'm curious to see what kind of challenges that the follow-up, right? Because detecting that there's a counterfeit is one thing. The next step of actually doing the
enforcement and
follow-up,
prosecuting.
yeah, that's a different story altogether. But I'm excited to see it, and
Mhm.
any traceability helps.
Yeah.
Right, the investigators, every little bit of evidence helps, even if it's not sufficient to introduce into as evidence in a court case. Just
Yeah.
being able to see the path that the counterfeit product took is huge.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to quickly say about it is, and what I'm really happy is what they didn't do, what so many other brands sometimes do. They didn't just slap a hologram on it and says that'll protect it, because right. So I'm glad they didn't go with I just do a visible feature, or I do one of the many security features that are being sold, but that they started to really think through what might make sense for my business versus just putting something on that can easily be counterfeited.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they're spending the money on something that can't be counterfeited, that is not detectable, that's inside the packaging. There's another client I'm working on with right now that does the exact same thing. So it's really, I like that when you're trying to outsmart the criminals. I enjoy that. Make sure you like and subscribe us wherever you get your podcasts. And Shabir, please read us out.
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner. Podcast production by Anna Rowland, management by Sarah Ember Safdar, and theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.